the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show some reference that I shot. This was some reference I shot a while back now for another stream, which was all about shooting reference to begin with and doing the initial analysis of the reference and taking that analysis and creating a pose out of it. So if anyone's interested in that topic, here's the actual recording of that stream. So that just goes over the whole, like, how do you record reference? How do you get good reference? All of that stuff. So I'll just play through this a little bit. That way we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. And then we'll just pick a random spot to start analyzing. So let's go in here. So I shot reference and I put together, I ended up just putting music to it. So basically showing the like boring reference versus more interesting reference. As soon as I found this song, I had to put it to something. So it's really just the exaggeration. How do you push exaggeration in reference? That's what we were going over in the original topic. How to make something just more interesting, which, to kind of summarize it, is just go all out with it. Just have fun. Don't worry about going too far. It's really just having fun with your reference and thinking of who your character is. So for example, here, if you're having someone call on a phone, you don't want to just do a call. Think of who this character is. What's the situation? Maybe try to find different ways that they could do a certain thing. I thought it would ask for the same demo. Oh, nice. So, and then this last one here, this is something I'm going to talk about a little bit, but we talked about it in the original topic, is when you're shooting reference, there's going to be those times where you're between takes and you're just kind of thinking of what you should do next. That is reference gold right there, because it's true thought. So what I mean by that is, okay, we can probably stop it here. So like right there, there's not much happening. It kind of seems like boring reference, but this is actually me thinking, oh, what should I do next? What's the next kind of character thing I can do? How can I push the character? And while it seems like there's not much there, it's got a lot of the little details that make reference gold. So for example, as I'm just sitting there, I'm breathing, and I can really see how my arm, as I kind of shift my weight, this arm just kind of swings. It just relaxes and it's swinging. As I'm not the one, hey, take care, have a great weekend. As I'm thinking, I'm constantly moving my hand. Watch that hand hanging down there. It's not just sitting still. So even though I'm just standing there in a moving hold, there's these little motions that are going through. I'm breathing. At some point, I start biting my lip right here. And you can really have some great reference in there for those quiet moments in your shot. So that's basically all covered in that previous video that I'd posted earlier, which is from a previous stream. Now, for today, the main thing that I wanted to talk about was a trick that I was taught when I was a student on really understanding the changes between two poses. Now, this can help whether it's a really broad pose, but it really helps with subtle poses. So let's actually just go quickly over that, and then we'll go over the questions in the chat here. So we can do kind of this section here. So we're going to have a pose here. Let's say this is our key. We're going to have another key here. So that'll be our subtle motion. And then maybe another key there and there. So we've got 4 keys. Now, this is something you can do with something like Keyframe MP if you can put bookmarks in there, or you can even do this in Maya. Just bring in your reference into Maya as an image plane, set some keys on the timeline, and basically look at your reference and find the key poses that you want. So for example, I want to put this as one of my key poses right from the start in my initial blocking. Okay, so I marked them down like this. And then what I do is I just skip through them. Now the reason this is helpful is that if we just play through the animation here, so I'll just hit play. As we're watching it and we're trying to study the reference, there's a lot of motion that's happening. When you're looking at a reference and you just hit play, that is a very hard way to really understand what's going on. Like, as I'm watching it, I'm constantly focusing on one piece at a time, which makes it hard to kind of get a grasp of how everything is working in relationship to each other, especially between 2 poses. Okay, now I could scrub through. So this is what most people will do. They'll bring it into something like QuickTime or Keyframe MP or anything that will give them some scrubbing capability, and then they'll start scrubbing through. And this helps a lot. So this gives you the ability to start really analyzing and breaking things down. That's great. The problem is that we are focusing on everything. We are focusing on the pose, the keys, and every single breakdown and in between all at the same time. Is that bad? Not at all. But it can make it very difficult to take your animation and go, okay, I've got my 2 keys. How can I make those 2 keys interesting? And how does the relationship between those 2 keys work? How do they relate to each other? So instead, you can use this method, which is you put some keyframe or some bookmarks or something that you can use as a guide. So you're using this in Maya, just putting some keyframes, and then you skip ahead to those. So for example, if I use Keyframe MP here, and I can jump from one key to the next, like this. So I'm just skipping all the in-betweens and I'm going from one key to the next, just like I would do in stepped mode in Maya when I'm blocking. Suddenly, this makes it a whole lot easier to see changes and to see small changes between 2 poses. This method is really great for breaking down the subtle rotations, translations, and motions between poses. So let's kind of take these 2 poses here, this one and this one. Well, when I start analyzing this, I just kind of start analyzing it like I would with my own shot, or how I would start animating a shot. You start with the hips and you work your way out. So what's happening with the hips? Well, obviously we can see that they're moving screen left. That's the easiest thing. We can kind of look at the spacing of the hips right there. Yep, definitely moving screen left. But we can also start feeling a change in here. There's a rotation. If you actually look, and this is where looking at the details of the clothing, make sure you don't wear something all black when you're shooting reference. Something that stands out is very nice. In this case, I've got pants that, as you can see, I sit way too long. I've got way too many wrinkles right here on the pants from sitting for way too many hours in classes. But that's very helpful because I can use those as a guide. And when I look at kind of the relationship between these, I can see that there's tilting going on. You can kind of see it right here where can't draw a straight line. Whoop, there we go. There's a slight tilt. As I rotate my hips, I tilt them as I go. They also rotate. they're rotating around this way, away from camera on the screen right side. And I can see that very subtly by going here. If I was to scrub through and just do this, it can be easy to miss that little rotation. And especially when you're playing back at full speed, that little rotation can be easy to overlook, especially as you're looking at the whole picture. But when you just do this, it stands out a little bit more because we see that change, that contrast. So if we kind of apply it in animation terms, kind of the Maya terms, well, when we're trying to block in our pose, we're looking at the translate X, Y, and Z, and we're looking at the rotate X, Y, and Z. That's the main rotations and translations that we're looking for. Well, we can do the same thing. So we've got translate X side to side. Well, yeah, that's definitely happening. We can definitely see that change right there. What about translate Y? Well, let's look for that. So translate Y, just find a good kind of vertical line to follow. This could be the line of the shirt, like right here, and see where that's going. It's going down slightly, ever so slightly, that those hips are dropping. So we're getting a T. See if I can draw that somewhere. You'll see TX is going left. Translate Y is going down ever so slightly. Translate Z is going back. You can kind of see that the hips get a little further away from camera. So that is going back. So we start analyzing all that. We do the same thing with the rotations. But by flipping back and forth, it allows us to see those little changes. Okay, so we've done the hips. Yay. We do the same thing for the chest. Now with the chest, we can see that there's definitely some rotation happening. The chest is a lot more kind of rotated screen left here, and then it's more forward on this pose. We can look at the shoulders to see if there's any changes in the clavicles. We can look at the arms. What are the arms doing? Well, in this case, that fly, it's like landing right in front of that microphone, just staring at me. The arms, we can see that there's no change really happening in this arm. It just kind of stays right where it is. No change. But the other hand, we feel that flip, that little flip of the wrist. Now that's pretty easy to see, obviously. But what we can also see with this is the angle of the arm. So here, if we look at the angle of the forearm here, it's kind of pointed. If we kind of go from the elbow, it's going screen right. And it creates this nice flow right into the rest of the hand. We look at this. Suddenly, that angle has changed. It goes up. So we're not just getting a little wrist motion that's moving independently. There's a little wave that's happening to that arm. Again, we're just breaking things down, trying to understand how all of this is moving. That's really the goal. So it's just all of this analysis. Now, okay, great. We've got our two poses. Yay. And we could do the head and all of that. This is also great for expressions, by the way. You can really see the small changes in expression this way, which is great for when you're doing the facial animation. But how else can this help? Well, once we have those two poses, we now understand the difference between them. What's happening, what's changing, and oftentimes I'll put a lot of notes and kind of write things down so I understand where the body's going. Does this mean I have to do all of this exactly in my animation? Not at all. Nope. It just means that at least I'm thinking about it so that when I do get into my animation, I've got an answer if I need to ask a question on how something should move. and then I'm making the choice of following that or changing it myself. So it's giving you that knowledge to make informed choices. Okay, well, let's keep going. Let's actually add a breakdown. So let's say I want to start breaking down my shot now. I've put my keys in and okay, I need to break things down. What should lead, what should follow? Well, let's kind of go through here. And I'm just going to go, let's see, we were on frame 495. Let's kind of break this down like I would on a normal shot. Let's go on 6s here for now. So this is going to be a breakdown. Let's do this in a different color. So once again, we do the same thing. And this is going to help us understand what leads and follows. So if I look at this here, suddenly this is starting to give us a lot of cool information. So we can definitely see that the wrist is leading. And the way we can see this is just look at your spacing. So you've got, let's say, the shoulder. This is going to be for the body here. We've got the hips, and then we've got the wrist and the head. So I'm just picking areas to track here. So let's say the center of the head here. So we've got all of those points. Now we go forward, and that fly almost landed right on my eye. I just saw it buzz right past. This is like the bee incident from a while back. So as we look here, look at that spacing. What's leading, what's following? And as we look at this, we can definitely see the elbow is definitely leading. Or sorry, not the elbow, the wrist. Definitely leading. The shoulder is quite wide. Similar to the head. I would say the head kind of looks like it's kind of the second thing. So hand is leading, head is following, then the shoulders, and the hips are last. Look at how small the hips are here. The hips are barely moving. So all of a sudden, there's our lead and follow. We know exactly what areas that fly is trying to land on my face. We have all the information on what's going to start moving and what's going to follow. Then we can start breaking that down even more in terms of analyzing this. So, okay, what's happening? Well, as the wrist is dragging, the fingers, or as I should say, as the wrist is leading, the hand is dragging. Look at the angle of the wrist here. It drags back. So we can easily see that as the hand comes through, it's actually straightening out a little bit. It's dragging. We see that the elbow actually doesn't really move that much. That one landed on my face. The elbow is actually moving less than the shoulder. Quite a bit less. So what this means is that as the body is tilting over, I'm going to exaggerate this here. Let's say you've got your elbow there and the body's tilting. The elbow is actually countering that motion. So we're getting some twist in there. A little bit of counter motion. They're still technically both moving screen left, but the body it's got this interesting twist to it. That's a nice little detail. That's going to help make your animation much less robotic. If you just have this and then the character just does that and just rotates in one basic way, and the elbow, the shoulders, the torso, all of that spacing stays exactly the same, that's going to be very boring. Robotic. Getting this in here gets that organic, lifelike motion. And there goes the fly again. That fly! We'll have to come up with a name for it at some point, because it's going to be part of the stream here for the full thing. I don't even know. It keeps landing on the microphone. Can you guys even hear it? Because it's very loud for me. It's a very loud fly. So we can start breaking all of this down. Now, another thing that we can see in this breakdown is that the leg is actually starting to move as well. You guys can hear the fly? Oh boy, this is gonna be an interesting recording. So we can see that that screen left leg is starting to move as well. So as I'm shifting my weight, we can start to see when that foot starts to shift, and actually it's shifting before we even get to the main poses here. But the foot is actually leading the motion quite a bit more than even the rest of it. Now, this is something I would recommend when you're shooting reference. Don't wear big baggy pants like I'm doing here, because it makes it very hard to see if something's moving or not. So, we can start analyzing all of this. We can start analyzing the curve of the body. So, a little kind of basic thought on this is, well, if we've got, let's say, a pose here, that's the hips. We've got the shoulders there, and let's say there's a kind of simple curve there on the body. So that's our line of action, going through the pose and then down here. Well, if the hips just move a little bit, and the shoulders move quite a bit, what does that do to the line of action? It changes it. It exaggerates it. So as I'm looking at this here, and I see, oh, the hips are barely moving. Ah, the shoulders are moving quite a bit more. That tells me that in my posing, I'm not just going to have my character slide over and that's it. To exaggerate this, let's say this is the kind of body pose here, like that. As it goes through, I would exaggerate the straight on that side, and then the bend on this side. So you get a change in the body here. As slight as it is, we could exaggerate that. We could push the design element, even in this small moment, to accentuate the body motion. So doing this type of breakdown, it's a great study. You can even do this with animation. It's great for doing master studies of animated clips as well. But especially with reference, it helps you to start understanding that lead and follow and really breaking down why certain things move, when they stop, when they start. So for example, let's go here. So we're at 501. Let's go to 507. We'll just do every 6 frames here. Kind of how it works out. So if we look at this here, what are we noticing if we start putting it all together? Well, one big thing that I'm noticing is, still staying with that lead and follow, is that the wrist, which was leading earlier, the wrist was leading here. It reaches its maximum motion here. If anything, it actually counters itself. So here, look at the line of the arm here. It starts off at one angle. It goes the other way. The angles, so now from elbow to wrist, it goes screen left. And then it straightens out. There's an overshoot in there. The elbow is overshooting and coming back. Great. Very nice. But that's mid-motion. So if we were to just go from this key here to this key here, a lot of times what people will get when they're starting to animate a shot is this very like linear motion where everything starts and stops together at the same time. Really getting that robotic and boring look to an animation where everything just kind of stops, 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 and everything's moving and stopping together. All of a sudden here, this breakdown, if I was to put this in my animation, suddenly I'm getting interesting animation, because that arm, even though it led the action, it stops mid-action. The hips are still going. The body's still translating. But the arm has gone from just this drag into a wave. So we're starting to get this interesting breakup of different actions. not everything is constantly changing. It's kind of the same with the head. What's happening with the head? If we look at the facial expression, look at how long it takes for the facial expression to change. So as the face comes up here on this breakdown, it's really not doing much. The head is coming up, but the facial expression, I would actually say, is probably coming down a little bit. It's kind of like an anticipation before it opens up here a little bit more. So instead of just being here and then and everything, even the face, all opens up at the same time, no, it's wrist, face, then body. There's this offset. Not everything is starting and stopping together. This is going to be huge for making animation interesting. I know I've been repeating it a lot, but it bears repeating, because it is, of all the things that I tend to see when I'm teaching students, this is probably one of the biggest concepts that takes people a long time to understand. And once they do understand that they have to do it, it takes them a long time to understand how they should do it in Maya or in the animation program. And this kind of gives you that guide. Again, it's giving you those answers of what leads, what follows, how can I break this down so that not everything moves together in this boring, uniform way. So when I learned this as a student, this was one of the biggest things that helped me really get a grasp of breakdowns and how they can be used to exaggerate an animation so that it's just more interesting. Now, what I really love about this is subtle animation. We talked about this right at the beginning, but let's say you have a head turn here. It's just a head turn. There's nothing else to it, really. This is one of those moments where in animation, you would have the character there, and then you turn the head, and okay, it's a head turn. Turn the head, done. And the rest of the body is absolutely still with no motion, which looks really fake because you don't have a moving hold. Or you would move the body, but if you just move the body randomly just for the sake of a moving hold, it might not look good, and it might just make the character look like they're sliding across the screen in a weird way. Well, if you do this, just look at your reference, look at the two poses, and look for the little changes. So, what are we seeing here? Well, we see that there's this kind of drop in the body. The hips are traveling down ever so slightly. But we also see that there's this offset in the hips versus the shoulders. So if you look at the shoulders here, there's a slightly bigger drop. Like if I kind of, the way I like to do this when it's subtle motions like this is I'll just kind of close my eyes a little bit, kind of defocus from the shot, let it be a little bit hazier, and I'll go between the two and see which motion stands out most. That's usually the bigger motion. So if I do this, I can feel those shoulders dropping more than the hips are moving. So that means that as the characters like this, they're dropping in their body, but then their shoulders are also doing an extra little drop. It adds variation. It's not just the whole thing sliding as if it was my favorite little prop recently. Just this little toy going downwards, and everything stays in perfect relationship to each other. No, not at all. There's a drop in there, but every body part is ever so slightly adjusting itself differently. So we can start applying that. We can also see, look at this elbow. It barely moves. So even as the shoulder drops, that elbow is staying in place, which means the arm here is countering that motion. The other elbow has a much bigger drop. So, I can avoid some twinning right there. We see a lot of motion in the wrist. The head definitely has a lot of motion. And once again, we can figure out that lead and follow. What looks like it's leading, what's following? Well, definitely the head is leading here. We can feel that right there. That's the thing that's moving the most. Then I would say it's probably this arm right here. I wouldn't count the hand because it's kind of just, in this case, it would be constrained or locked to the head. So it's just following along. But the arm is moving quite a bit here. Then it would be the body, then the hips. So I've got this flow already of how can I start making this breakdown work? And we can keep going. Like if I was to actually put actual breakdowns in here, well, let's go through. So let's say we had a breakdown here. What's changing? On this, the shoulders are actually leading along with the blink. And this is actually kind of cool. The head is moving upwards. Look at that. You can actually see, if you just watch the hair, you can see the head, as I'm blinking, my neck is stretching upwards. My shoulders are going down. My hips, ever so slightly, like a pixel or two, are starting to move down and back slightly, but my head is going up. Well, that's an interesting breakdown. That would be a cool little thing to add to your shot, because now you're avoiding just the mechanical drop. You've got this offset. And the whole face is actually stretching. So this is actually a stretch pose. You can see how the jaw is moving down. If you look at the bottom lip right here, the mouth is moving ever so slightly down. The brows are going up. So my face is stretching right here. I'm going from kind of sitting here, anticipation, stretching out, and then this would be the squash pose, where it comes back down. Ooh, that's a nice little touch I can add in there. Suddenly, that makes that whole section much more fleshy and interesting versus just head turn and with a slight expression change where the corners just move up and that's it. No, the whole head is actually adjusting itself slightly. What about the hip? Wouldn't the hip be stationary while everything else is moving? Well, that's the thing. The hip would be, you could say that it's stationary, but it's actually adjusting itself slightly, just a lot less than the rest. So for example here, between these two poses, you can actually see that there's some motion. If you kind of look at the wrinkles in the pants or kind of the crease right here, there is a slight motion even in this small amount here. And then you can see it more right there. How the hips, you can even see the rotation of the hips, how this side is rotating down further as the weight presses down. So even though you've got this head motion, the hips aren't absolutely stationary. This gives you those moving holds. This makes it a lot easier to know where should the hips be going so that you don't have a random moving hold. Now, depending on the style, for example, let's say we're going for a really cartoony style of animation, I can choose not to put those hips in there and just keep them absolutely stationary. That's fine. That would work with the cartoony style. But at least I know that it's supposed to be in there and that it's countering the motion of the head, which now allows me to make a conscious choice of what I should do. So you're not just animating randomly. That is the key to all of this. Is this analysis is not meant to be copied exactly. Maybe I want the hips to go up in this section. Maybe I think that's going to make my shot even better and maybe create a better transition into the next moment where suddenly I have a bigger, maybe a drop in the hips. So I'll use this moment to build in a little anticipation to that. But I'm making that choice. I am choosing to disregard my reference. And the reason that is important is because if I choose to have the hips go up in this point here, that's going to change how the head and the shoulders react. So now when I'm looking at my reference, I know, because I've made this choice, that I can't just have the shoulders go down here in my animation. I've changed something. So I have to make another choice of how do I make those shoulders work in this situation now. So it's all a matter of choices and questions and finding answers to those questions. But by using this, it helps you to at least get the ball rolling, and you're not animating things randomly. That's the worst thing that can happen, is if you just go into a shot and go, okay, I've got this general idea for an animation, they're going to do this and this, and okay, let's go. Just animate, throw it all in. And then you look at your reference and go, oh, okay, wait, I should be doing this. But you haven't analyzed anything else, so you just throw that in there for no reason, which means it doesn't tie into anything else, and now you're wondering why it's not working even though you're following your reference. I've seen that a lot. I've seen a lot of students who are following their reference, but they're not following their reference. They are just using the reference to throw random things in, hoping that it will make the animation suddenly better. But if you're just throwing random things in and ignoring half of it and not asking any questions, not making those choices, you're just going to get randomness. So that's pretty much the main tip that I wanted to give on this, was just going through and setting those keys, analyzing the differences. And like I said, I'm doing this in Keyframe MP, so I can set bookmarks and just go between them. You could do this in Maya. Bring your reference in as an image plane, set some keys on your timeline wherever you want to have a pose change to be, or wherever you want to analyze a breakdown, and then just go next key, last key. So just from key to key and bounce between those and analyze your reference is hugely helpful. And like I said earlier, this is the thing that really helped me understand breakdowns when I was a student. And also, hello Felicia and our Adam stream, hello. So let's take a look here. I think there was a couple of questions earlier. I understand the concept of analyzing pose, what moves when, but what should we do when timing? Should we copy the references timing? You can use the references timing as a guide. I very rarely ever use just like copy it one-to-one, because I'm not a great actor in the sense that I don't have a great internal timing. I tend to move things very evenly as I move. So I will try to take my reference and I'll use, again, the initial timing as a guide. So okay, this motion was a little slower, this one was a little faster, and then I'll try to exaggerate it a lot. So if I've got kind of a motion that's like slow head turn and then faster there, I'll try to maybe exaggerate it, make that even slower in my animation, and then make that motion even faster. You're just using it as a guide, and then you're just looking at your animation trying to make it feel as good as possible. This is where that initial I've talked about this in previous streams, but the storytelling poses and the kind of initial blocking, when you have very few poses in your shot, that's a great time to start trying to retime things to exaggerate that overall feel of the shot just in the poses, in those few minimal poses. And this is just going to help you not get glued to your reference. Reference is just that, and like we've done all of this analysis, I could throw it all out if I choose to do something else. It's the same with motion capture. Motion capture is like the ultimate reference. It gives you your timing, your spacing, it gives you everything. It even gives you something that you can put your animation on top of and just have it there. You can go around it all in 3D space. It's fantastic. But it is just that. It's reference. So I can choose to use it. I can choose to use parts of it. I can choose to use none of it and reanimate it all from scratch by hand. It is a tool. This is the same thing. Now, in terms of understanding timing, the biggest thing that I would say in terms of doing that, to really kind of start building a internal library of timing, is to first study how long things tend to take. So it's kind of harder with shots like this because it's just a lot of random motions. But let's say you take a walk and you just look at a lot of different walks. let's stick with kind of more natural walks, like not a big happy walk where a character's strutting down the street, but just a general walk. If you look at videos of people walking and break down the timing of their walks, the majority of people, if they're walking at a normal pace, tend to take 12 frames per step. So half a second per step. It's just kind of this natural inclination we have to that timing. If we start to walk a little bit slower, it goes down to about 16 frames, or I should say, it goes up to 16 frames per step. If a person starts to walk faster, kind of like a, not running or jogging, but just like a fast walk, 8 frames per step. So you're analyzing a lot of different references and you're creating this, I don't really want to use the word stereotype, but this kind of normalization of what people tend to do. So now when you go into your animation, go, okay, I need to animate a walk. I want just a natural, normal walk. You go, oh, aha, I remember, 12 frames per step. And you can use that as a base to suddenly go, okay, but maybe I want it a little faster, maybe not quite normal. So maybe I'll, instead of 8, it's not gonna, or faster walk. Instead of 8 frames, that's a little too fast, I'll go 10, just a little faster. And you time out the breakdowns too. Also, master studies of animation. Look at the timing that animation uses in their motions. So for example, if you look at Hotel Transylvania, when they are doing very fast cartoony animation and a character is moving from one pose to the next in this really cartoony way, on average it's 3 to 4 frames. So if you do enough analysis of that, you start getting that idea in your head, that kind of fallback that you can use. Okay, I need a cartoony motion here. Okay, cartoony motion, 3 to 4 frames. If I want a nice smear frame in there, that could work really well. And once you start getting that, once you start analyzing, and this all comes from analysis. You're gonna get your sense of timing from really paying attention to the timing of your reference and of any master studies you do. You can start throwing it in. So let's say I want this shot here. Now we've got, let's say this head turn. I really want a fast cartoony head turn here. Well, the timing right here in my reference, if we take right from the initial blink here, so 468 I would say is where the head turn would kind of start if we take in the head blink. 468 till it stops here. We'll go 482. So 468 to 482, that's 14 frames right there. 14 frames just for a head turn like that. If I'm doing this in a cartoony style and I really want that kind of like just very fast snap of the head, well, again, I know that for a cartoony motion, 3 to 4 frames would probably be enough. Oop, there you go. I've retimed my shot. So it's a mixture of the two. Understanding the mechanics, understanding how the body works, and also studying your timing. And it's something I used to do quite a bit when I started learning animation, is I would just study timing of things. What's the timing of a bouncing ball? How fast do they lose time per bounce? What's the timing of walks? What's the timing of runs? What's the timing of a cat's walk? What's the timing of a big dog versus a small dog? All of these different things. So you start building this library in your mind. How long does a blink last? So from eyes open, closed, then open again. What's that timing? How long does it take to close the eye versus opening the eye? And then you look at fast blinks, slow blinks, half blinks, and you analyze that and you write it down. Basically studying anything you can. And over time, it doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you're going to start building that library so that you're animating a shot. Oh, I need a blink here, but I want a fast blink here and then kind of a slow double blink over there. You got that timing in your head. Does it mean it's going to be absolute perfect timing? No. But it gives you the starting point to build off of. And you will reach a point where suddenly you don't always have to analyze reference. It's always good to do it anyway, but you don't have to because you've got that internal library to build off of. Do you think reference dependence is a thing? Yes, definitely. I'm a student and I'm always conscious about if I use reference too much and be dependent on it. It can definitely happen. I would say the bigger problem is reference independence, where people will shoot reference because they're told that they have to, especially students, and then just refuse to use it. Or they'll shoot one piece of reference, use that as their main kind of guide, and then never shoot any reference afterwards. Don't do that. If you get stuck on part of your shot, so maybe we're doing a shot like this, and maybe I want to kind of like have a hand scratch on the face, but my original reference doesn't really have it or doesn't show it quite clearly. Most students, and I fell into this when I was a student, will just go with it and just, okay, I've got to do this. Let's wing it. My reference kind of has it. Well, I'll use that and then go from there and see what happens. No. Just get your camera, sit down, do this, done. You've got your reference, animate it. Don't be afraid to reshoot reference, even for little sections. Now, the big thing with reference is, again, that analysis process. We want to analyze it so that we understand what's going on, but we don't want to copy it. And in the original stream that I was demoing this in, we actually talked about how to avoid that copying process. So let's see if I actually, yeah. So this was the sketches I had done earlier in that previous stream, where we were trying to figure out how we could push a pose. Now, I think, were we actually analyzing this pose? Yeah, I think so. So, haha, this actually works. I think it was this one. So, if we look at this here, we were trying to figure out how can we push this pose so that we're not just copying the reference and just getting the exact same thing. In reference is nice, but animation can be exaggerated a lot, and we can come up with new ideas based on that reference that can change things quite a bit. So in this case, I believe, if I remember correctly, this was kind of the starting pose. So just taking the line of action from the reference, kind of trying to get that very similar. Most of the posing very similar. And then, well, we went through, how do we change that? How do we exaggerate that pose? Well, what if we push the line of action so he's bent a little bit more? Suddenly, that's going to change a lot of the posing. The angle of the arm here changes because they're leaning forward. Does it mean that that's a bad thing? Not at all. Again, take your reference, you analyze it, understand why, and then you make conscious choices. But now, we could have a shot where the character's curved like this right at the start. Suddenly, you're using your reference, but you're creating something new and you're not copying. And you avoid that reference dependence. And then we even had this where we push the line of action the other way, or go for more of an S shape here. So it's really just exploration and being conscious that you are not copying your reference. The way I like to do this is just thinking of who my character is and how can I exaggerate that characteristic in them. If they're more confident, I might raise the chest more than I had in my reference. If I find that they should be sadder, I'll try to exaggerate those elements in the posing. So hopefully that answers the question there. It's not so much that using reference is bad or that using too much reference is bad. It's mostly that if you are sticking to it just because your reference says so, that's where it gets bad. That's where you start getting into rotoscoping. Oh, my reference says I have to do it this way. That's the arc of the head. Well, that's what I'm doing. Done. Sorry. No, if I feel like, the head arc this way, I'm not really liking it. I want to have that head roll go back and down. That way I really get kind of a little bounce there, and it's going to lead better into the next moment where they bring their head down. Because if I had a downwards arc, it would be that. So down and then down again. Not as interesting as up, down. So I can change that. I'm in full control. So hopefully that makes sense. And then let's see. Off topic, but I wanted to ask you where you found that sub alert. I think I found that on Giphy, and it's from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which if you haven't watched, I definitely recommend. It's a fun watch. That along with the Legend of Zelda animated TV series. A lot of people don't like the animated TV series of Zelda. I actually really like it. It's a lot of fun and very silly, but they do a great job, especially when you consider when it was made and how many Zelda games they had to reference from. So they didn't have the symphonic music that we have nowadays of Zelda. They didn't have all of these really cool concepts. A lot of it was from the first and second game, which means they made up a lot of the visual elements based on the pictures in the manuals and the 8-bit sounds. So I really like it. So I guess lastly, in terms of shooting reference, the main thing to keep in mind is that, like we were saying before, reference is reference. It is not our animation, or else I would just shoot this and I'll call it a day. Done. Haha. Animation is an exaggeration of life. If we were to just animate this directly like our reference is, there's no point to animation. Why not just shoot a live action film? And this is kind of a question that I shouldn't say a question, it's a thought that I always try to keep in the back of my head is, why is this animated? Why am I animating this shot? And the key to it is, if I'm going to stick to my reference 100%, why don't I just shoot live action reference? Or not live action, I just shoot this as a live action film. If I'm going to stick that closely to real life and not exaggerate anything, what is the point of animating in the first place? If we're animating something, it's to exaggerate an idea, to make the performance bigger than life. It doesn't mean it has to be cartoony. It doesn't mean that it has to be super wacky and like crazy. It doesn't even mean that it has to be that exaggerated. But how can we push the emotions even more? That is the true beauty of animation, is that unlike film, where even if you had the best actor on screen, the best actor is not in full control of their body at all times. So what I mean by that is they can choose when they want to blink, they can choose how they move their hands, all of that, but they don't know where every single fingertip is on screen, and especially in relation to the camera to get the perfect silhouette. They don't know and can control every motion of the hip to get the perfect like ease out to make a motion just kind of like just feel fantastic. If ever you've seen like what was it again? It's like, well, certain dancers, like sometimes you'll have some dancers, they just move and they're just moving. Other times, like you'll see a dancer and they just kind of do something with their hip or their shoulders, and it just feels so like spot on and right. Like they'll just kind of do a and hit the note right on, and it's just like, oh, that was perfect. You hit that beat so nice. As an actor, when you're doing a long scene, you're trying to think of so many things. You're thinking of your lines, you're thinking of how to be in that role. You can't control all of that. And you'll still make an amazing performance. But if we just then, as animators, copy that performance, what was the point? Instead, we can make everything perfect. Now, not perfect in the sense of like absolute perfection where everything is just amazing and immaculate. No, perfection is actually boring. We can add imperfections to things, which makes it perfect. I should really use a better meaning. It makes it more appealing. It makes it more interesting. Maybe at one point the character is walking through and we want to smooth out the arc to make that kind of just that gliding motion feel even more impressive. Or we could go the other way. What if we want the character to feel like a klutz, where they're starting to glide through the scene and then they trip a little bit and it's just a little hitch? Maybe the actor forgot to do that, but we can do it. We have full control. So when you're animating a shot, regardless of what it is, just keep in mind, why are you animating this? Why isn't it just live action? What can you do in your shot to make it stand out even more than the live action did? Now, when you're first starting out, that's a very hard answer, or a very hard question to answer, because how do you make it better? What can you do to make it better? You don't know the techniques yet. That's where learning, analyzing, studying, and doing master studies comes in very handy, because then you can see, oh, that's what makes that moment feel good. Oh, that's what I can do to take this moment and make it just hit and feel so impactful. And just as a oh, hey, Zentalic, thanks so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. Just as a kind of example of this, I've got some clips here. Where are they? Okay. Like right here. This is from one of my favorite films, Dofus, which, if you guys have seen my computer, is the background that I have on my computer. So this is a character who's about to attack another one. So we could have the character kind of take this spell and then just move forward. But if we watch the animation, watch how it feels. Like, it's just that. It's just a character rushing forward. But doesn't it feel cool? Like there's just this really cool timing in there. This cool spacing. As the character comes forward, they could have easily just had the character prepare and then run. And just run forward. But instead, they add a little pause. As the character comes through, now keep in mind this is 2D animation, so things can keep still, but it goes to what we were talking earlier. The hips don't have to move. She's doing all this motion, her hips aren't moving. They don't need to. That's a conscious choice. But right here, so she rushes forward. Look at that spacing. Let's actually put this in a color that shows up. So, no, that's not going to show up. Red? Okay. So, she goes forward. Look at that spacing on this one frame. All that beautiful detail in the face gone as it just smushes. And then look at that hold here. Now, keep in mind this is animated on 1s and 2s. So, you're going to have a few frames that just kind of freeze like that. That's fine. But look at that spacing. It comes in, slight ease, and then rushes forward, and then we get another ease up here. It actually holds before coming forward. Look at that. They didn't have to do that. They could have easily just gone in an arc, ease out, faster, 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 done. That's it. They chose to add this variation in the spacing, in the timing, and it creates such a beautiful element to it. There's a reason that it was animated. It made that moment hit more in a stronger way. Same thing here. This is again from Dofus. Look at the timing of this. It's just a character trying to grab this bell back. So good. So again, this is cartoony animation, but we can choose to try and get a certain feeling for it. Like, look at this. This makes no sense physically. The character runs forward, stops completely. They stop for, what is it? 101, 105. 4 frames. Completely still. And then in one frame, all that way, next frame, pretty much all the way there. And then they just pause once again. Just freeze, and then whoosh, right through again. That's taking timing and going to an extreme with it. Taking that concept of, okay, I'm going to push a little bit of a hold here and just going even further. Now, this is more cartoony. What if we take something that's, I guess, a little bit more realistic in terms of its animation quality? This is Legend of Korra. Great. If you haven't seen this, story-wise, some people like it, some people don't. Animation-wise, it is gorgeous. This is such a beautiful show to watch and just study the animation. But the animation tends to be much more realistic. You can even see it in the body proportions and the detail they put in. Like, look at all the detail they put into the musculature. You can see the shoulder blade right there. You can see the lat muscle right there. You can see the obliques right here. They are putting so much detail into the anatomy of these characters. These characters are really based on real life characters. It's not cartoony. It's not noodle arms and like Adventure Time style, which I love Adventure Time, by the way. Any style of animation is good. They just have different reasons. But does it mean that they have to stick with realistic timing and just animated the way, like just shoot live action reference and copy it? No. Look at the way they push this motion here. Look at that elbow right here. Look at the spacing. Goes through. Huge hit right there. And then keep going with that spacing. And then swing through. It's slowing down. Comes around through there. But they are exaggerating that. Look at how you just go from one frame here and then right through there. There's no ease out like there would have to be in real life. In real life, we can't just go from our elbow here to there in one frame. It's going to have, you're going to see a little bit of ease as the muscles release and then go through. Here, nope. Just go straight into that motion. And look at how long they're dragging the other elbow back, the other hand. We kind of imagine the wrist right here. That wrist is dragging so slowly forward. We were talking about lead and follow earlier in the stream. How in my reference I had the wrist lead and then the rest follow that. This is that to the extreme. They're taking that concept and pushing that lead and follow. So the other arm leads and then they let the whole body twist and you get that stretch in the body so that when it actually does whip up, you go from here all the way, it's even off screen, all the way over there and then here. Look at that. So all of this just go in like 3 frames. That is pushing their timing, pushing their spacing, pushing their lead and follow. They could have just taken some reference, and I'm sure they use a lot of reference for this, of people doing martial arts and copied it, but would that have been as interesting? Not at all. It's pushing those elements. So cool. I love the animation in this show. Man, now I want to watch it again. So this applies to anything. So let's pick I've got a clip here. Oh, that was Legend of Korra. If you're gonna watch The Legend of Korra, I would definitely recommend watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. Both of them are on Netflix. I would watch Last Airbender first, then watch Legend of Korra. It'll just kind of make the story make more sense. Yeah, so this is My Hero Academia. So when you're studying animation, oddly enough, this is kind of just a little side tangent here, but when you're analyzing animation, don't get locked into analyzing one style of animation. I actually see this quite often with students, which is surprising. And I try to get people to kind of broaden their minds, but a lot of people are kind of very specifically one style of animation. They like Western animation or they like anime, one or the other. And regardless of which one people have preferences on, like everyone's gonna have a preference. That's fine, but don't minimize your ability to analyze other styles. Stop motion, European animation. Look at all of it. All of it can teach you something. Personally, I just love animation, period. If it's animated, I love it. I just love beautiful animation. So in this case, let's take a look at this. This is highly exaggerated. And where was the scene that I wanted to see? Right here? Yeah, right there. So as we see this right here, look at that. Look at that motion that they go through here. So this, with a lot of animators, Japanese animators, a lot of times they don't use reference, which is just crazy. They've just gotten so good at animating and understanding the body that they don't even need to use reference for these really complex moves. It's kind of crazy how much talent a lot of them have. And this goes for like any animators. Some Western animators, you'll see clips from them, and it's like, wow, that was so highly detailed. Yeah, didn't use any reference. Just made it out of the top of my head. It's like, what the heck? But that's because they've studied and studied and studied and studied and studied before that to reach this point. It's not just something that clicked on. But like, look at just the spacing of the fingers here. How he opens his hands right there. It's so beautiful and dynamic. The angle of the fingers. How at every single frame, they have an interesting silhouette. So you never get a pose like this, where all the fingers are just pointing straight to camera, even though he's doing this motion here. The fingers are always interesting. They are very conscious of their choices through here. And it makes a big difference. So when you're studying animation, and this, like, look at all the detail in the hands here. Jeez. All the lines that you have to animate. Just even thinking of trying to animate a simple move like this, simple in the sense that it's just kind of sweeping across, the hands aren't doing too much, but all of that in 2D with the perspective, and it's like, how would you even do it? Yeah, exactly. When you're watching in real time, it's so easy to miss all of these details. So even something like this. So this is from the Tangled TV series. Much simpler in its design, but it's got amazing appeal in, again, the timing, the posing, and just the general kind of, I love that moment, the general feeling of the shot. You can analyze that. We can analyze pretty much anything. You can analyze why you don't like an animation. Now, I don't think I actually have any clips of that on my computer right now, of animations that I feel are like not working, but do that as well. Now, personally, this is something I'm never going to do. Just I get asked this question quite often, actually, to analyze like poor animation. It's not something I'm ever going to do on stream for one specific reason. When you're looking at poor animation that doesn't feel as good, doesn't feel like it really hit, there are many reasons why it can be bad, and I don't want to make any assumptions. So a lot of people will see bad animation and go, oh, the animator, they weren't really good at this, they should have done it a different way. Who knows? It could have been the animator, it could have been the director, it could have been the producer, it could have been so many steps. It could have just been that they didn't have time. Some productions, you literally have a day to make a shot and that's it. Put it in. If something went wrong, too bad. That's the final product. So it wouldn't be fair to judge that on a public medium like this. So I'll stick to gorgeous animation, beautiful animation, because, well, look at it. It's so adorable. And like, just find clips you like. Whenever I'm watching shows, I just make a list of clips that I really enjoy, and I'll go through and I'll analyze them. And we've done this on stream as well. Analyze, why did you like it? What attracted you to it? Was it the timing? Was it the spacing? The posing? This can really help boost that level up. So you can even use the same techniques that we had talked about before on analyzing the reference. So let's find a section here, for example. So let's go from, I love this moment. The timing of it is so good, and the poses in Cass right here. Like, look at the way her arm gets dragged down, and that's what drags her body. So good. But let's pick two poses that are pretty similar. So let's say there's a key here and then a key here. And we can do the same thing. Oh, and let's get rid of this one here so it doesn't get in our way. So this. Well, if you analyze it, we can see, yes, the foot's moving up. It's moving the sword up. But you can start seeing a few little extra details. As the foot's coming up here, her body is leaning back. Her elbow is actually coming out this way. So it's very slight. It kind of looks like everything's moving just screen left, but it's not. Her head is creating an arc this way. Her elbow is starting to arc out this way. They're coming in together. It creates a nice contrast. As this is happening, the sword is rotating out that way. We can even see a little bit of motion in her knee as her whole hips shift over. So all of that detail we can see in there. We can see here as Cass's body is being pulled upwards. Her hips are actually coming down. The contrast in there gives this nice anticipation. So it's not just the whole body being dragged up. As her body's being dragged up, she still has control over her hips, and she's trying to fight that. We can see the knee being affected. If we were to break this down, let's go into the middle here. So once again, this is the breakdown. What leads? Well, look at this. This is interesting. As her arm is being dragged up, her head is countering that first. So she is fighting this motion. She's not just letting herself be dragged up. She's fighting to push down against this leg before the leg takes over and pulls her up. And we can see that in the hips as well. The hips are coming down. The body is trying to go down before it gets dragged there. So now when we look at this section, it just goes by super quick. But that little drag of her head makes all the difference. right here. And then you can see how that head gets dragged upwards. Interesting. It gives us a way to break this down and avoid the, again, I say this not as a way of picking on students, but as someone who was a student and who has seen many students go through. It's one of the biggest hurdles you're going to face as an animator, is avoiding the, let's say she's in this position and just kind of everything moves up together boringly mechanically. That concept is very hard to wrap your head around when you first start. It's just part of being an animator. It's you're thinking of so many things, the 12 principles, all of that. Having that breakup of action is very tricky. Analyzing it this way helps you understand that. And EduOfficial, hey, thank you so much for the host. Also, hello, new people. And I see the drink emotes. I'm gonna take a few sips here. Everyone telling me to take a sip of water. It's kind of sad that I need people to remind me to drink water, but I do love that emote because it helps. And EduOfficial, thank you so much for the follow. Let's see, I want to try art. Any good free software? Because I don't know if I like it or not. Oh, there's definitely good free software. If you're interested in drawing or 2D animation, I would recommend Krita. And Krita, right here. Let me get you the link for that as well. So Krita is completely free. And there's the link. So this is the website. And it's great for drawing, painting digitally, as well as 2D animation. It's got a really good list of really good 2D software built in. If you want to do 3D animation, I recommend Blender. So Blender, here's the link. That is going to be great for doing any 3D animation, modeling, rendering, anything like that. SyncSketch is a great link. So Going Flame. SyncSketch is awesome for analyzing animation. So if you ever want to analyze an animation, you can upload it to SyncSketch and you get all the drawing tools and scrubbing tools and everything. Similar to what I'm doing here. Now, keep in mind that with SyncSketch, you can only upload, I think it's 300 megabyte clips. So if you want to analyze a long clip, that's going to be a little trickier. If you want to just watch animation or scrub through, for example, TV shows like I'm doing here without having to upload it online, Keyframe MP is a great program. So let me find the link here. This is the program I'm using. Now I'm using the Pro version, which is $75, but there is a free version. So there's Keyframe MP, SyncSketch. If you want to do video editing, which is great if you're putting together a short film or something like that, and you want to kind of put all the clips together, add sound, music, all of that, DaVinci Resolve is great. It's kind of like Adobe Premiere if ever you've used Adobe products. This is fantastic. So far, all of this is free. You can use Blender for drawing or video too. Exactly. Blender is kind of it does a little bit of everything. You can do 2D animation with it. You can analyze animation with it. You can do 3D animation with it, modeling, rendering, all that. It even has editing software built into it, so you can kind of edit things together. So Blender is kind of the go-to for all of it. Personally, I prefer Krita for 2D animation just because I'm used to like a 2D interface versus a 3D interface for it. Eventually, I do want to just kind of learn Blender and get more in-depth on those tools, though. So, yeah, if you're interested in starting to learn this field and kind of exploring the different elements, these are all good resources to use, and they're all free. So you don't have to pay a thing to start learning. When will I do a Blender stream again? When I have time to start learning Blender. That's been the big thing, is I want to start watching some tutorials and kind of getting back into it, but I just don't have the time to do it recently. It's been been very hectic at work, which is not a bad thing. It just leaves less time to do the learning on my own side of things. You're always learning in animation, which is the fun and tricky part. So yeah, study as much as you can. Even, again, find real life clips. So this is a clip I found online of just eye motion. So study that. Look at the timing and the spacing of an eye move. How does the eyelid react with the eyeball? How does the eye itself move? And you can see here how, as it moves, it's very sharp. Like, look at that, just one frame. This is a real life reference, and it just moves in one frame. Here we get a little bit more, like 2 frames right there. Here, 1, 2. This one's a little bit more, like maybe 3, 2. That's great. If you have to animate eye darts and eye motions, just find a clip of, you can find these clips easily. Just look at eye darts or eye close-up on YouTube or something and analyze it. And then suddenly you'll know how to animate eye darts. What's the timing of an eye dart? How far does it move? What's the spacing? There you go. Look at a blink. You'll know how. So she actually blinks here. Where is it? Yeah, right there. Well, look at that spacing. Now it's actually missing the one contact pose there. Or actually, it might just even be a half blink. No, it is a full blink. But we can use this as our reference. And the weird thing with a blink is we tend to animate them very simply. When you look at a blink, look at where the muscles are being pulled here. The bottom lid doesn't go up. A lot of people, when they animate blinks, they move the bottom lid up. It doesn't go up. It goes sideways. It's going this way. As the eye opens, you can then feel it release over here. The actual eye corner, if you actually look right here, and there, that's the corner of the eye, it moves in. Look at that. The eye muscles, they don't go up and down, they contract inwards, which gives us the appearance of a blink. The top lid goes down, but the rest of it is actually being pulled this way. Even the corner of the eye here, which that's the tear duct, so it's not moving that much, but look at that. See how this line here, we can feel it go across and then around. There's a little arc to it. There's arcs in everything. And then right here, the lower lid doesn't go up during the blink. It actually comes back up here, but not across the whole eye right away. So the lower lid actually goes down here first and then back up. It doesn't go up to meet the upper eye. So you analyze that. But don't just take one blink from one person from it. Analyze many blinks from many different people. Same thing as if you were to analyze walks. If you analyze walks, don't just look at one person's walk. Imagine if you were to just find a random clip online and go, okay, I'm going to analyze a walk, and you pick it. And let's say that person has a limp or maybe a stiff leg. If you analyze that and go, well, job's done, that's the normal walk for every human being on Earth. No, that was one walk, and maybe that person had a stiff leg and it's changed the way they walk. You cannot use that as a basis for every walk. Same thing here. What if this person, maybe they just have a weird blink? That's not an impossibility. I've seen a lot of weird blinks. People blink differently. People react differently. The muscles change a little bit. So find multiple clips and find the commonalities between them. and the differences. And then you can choose what you want to add into your animation. But it all comes from analysis first and asking yourself why, asking yourself questions, not just looking at this and just going, okay, hit play, and I'm absorbing it, and I'm absorbing it. Okay, done. I've watched my reference. No. That does not get you any learning there. You have to think about it. Ask yourself, okay, how much time is this eye motion happening? What's the ease in, ease out? What's the spacing of the eye? If I kind of look at this edge here, we can definitely see that it eases into the final motion versus easing out. Even here, we get a little bit of an ease, whoosh, and then it stops. Oh, interesting. It did the opposite. Well, why? Try to find out why. Is there a reason? Maybe it was just the frame rate of the camera, but we try to see what we do. But either way, we do definitely see that there's an ease in, ease out. Eye motions are not this. If there's an in-between, it's not halfway through. That is not right. It tends to favor one side over the other. Let's see. But if anyone is scrutinizing an animation that closely when leisurely watching a film or watching it, seems they aren't exactly enjoying the show. Yes and no. Honestly, I'm very lucky in the sense that I can turn that off when I'm watching a show. So when I'm watching TV shows, I can just kind of not overanalyze it. But at the same time, there are certain times when I will see something and right away my analysis brain turns on and goes, wow, what do you see that? Whoa, look at that, the cool thing they did there. And at least for me, it doesn't ruin the enjoyment of a film. Even when it's like noticing something that they did wrong, or like maybe like, oh, that scene could have been better. Oh, like the composition there could have been pushed a little bit more. It doesn't ruin my enjoyment. I'm very lucky in that I'm able to just, okay, they did something there. It wasn't the greatest, but I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having fun. If you notice, eyes are generally shaped like the infinity symbol rather than two separate eyeballs. Your eyebrows lead into the other eye. Exactly. It's the face mask. They just love it so much when they have to download the film, put it into a media player, and watch every frame of it for more than 30 times, plus to awe at every detail. Yes, Zootopia is a great film for that. I think I have a Zootopia clip somewhere on my computer, but I'll have to find it. But yeah, I love doing this. So for example, like this is from Klaus. Like just looking at this and studying this animation and just like that motion right there where she throws the fish down, or she does a kind of like, oh, it's so good. Like, look at this. So good. The way she kind of gets this hang time before coming down here. They're just really exaggerating this kind of the bouncing ball principle. So when you start learning animation, one of the first things you learn is the bouncing ball, which is just whoop, and it comes over. Imagine it's a nice arc. It should come down here. It's just the bouncing ball principle. Ease in, ease out at the top, something like that. Yay. That's what they're doing here. Is if we watch her kind of, we'll use kind of the base of the neck as an example. It comes up, bouncing ball. I love how her face gets right into the scarf there. But look at that. It's a bouncing ball. They just exaggerated it. That's it. So this is another thing I see a lot of students fall into. So, and I've seen students, well, let me put it this way. A lot of students, when they start learning animation, the first thing that they'll learn is the bouncing ball. And okay, great starting point. A lot of students, the first thing they'll do is go, okay, I'm just going to get it done and move on to the cool stuff. And they just try to rush through the bouncing ball. First of all, don't do that. The bouncing ball is going to be part of your animation toolkit for the rest of your career. So make sure you really understand why you're animating a bouncing ball. Not just the how, that's also important, but why. The other thing is never get tired of the bouncing ball. So when you're learning the bouncing ball, it applies in everything, in all sorts of different ways. And I've seen a lot of students, as they kind of get higher up into more advanced acting classes and stuff, I've seen some students who actually, when you give them a note like, oh, in this section, the hips, it should be a little bit more like a bouncing ball. Think of the hang time here, or the change of direction there. It should kind of have a little bit more of a bouncing ball principle. And they would come back going, I don't want to hear about the bouncing ball. It doesn't matter. And it's like, no, it matters a lot. That principle that the bouncing ball shows you is literally in pretty much any type of animation in one way or another. So learn to love it, and learn it. Once you master it, it's going to make even a complex animation like this way easier, because we can just break things down into that bouncing ball. If we take the hip here, it's a bouncing ball. Look at that. Actually, I misdrew that one. See it? There we go. Make sure I track the same point. Look at that. Now it's got a little bit of an arc to it, so it's not exactly like a bouncing ball, but it's using the same principle. That hang time at the top, that fast down, it adds that weight. There's even a bounce at the bottom, right there. Bouncing ball. So yeah, that little expression there, that little flick right here, so good. And I love how her mouth gets super narrow right there and then kind of expands out. That's a beautiful little polishy touch, pushing the arcs of the corners of the mouth. So which tablet do I use? I use an old Intuos 3 tablet. So, oh, can I even bring it up screen? There you go. Yeah. Old Intuos 3. I've had this tablet for, what, 15, 16 years now? It still serves me well. Now, I actually did get a Cintiq recently. With all of the things that are happening in the world, I had some money that I was supposed to use to go traveling. So I invested into a Cintiq, which I'm using for sculpting and getting into some 2D animation. But for most of my typical animation, I use this Intuos 3. And for honestly, the last 10 years I've been an animator, it's all been on the Intuos 3. Let's see, 2D is way more tough than 3D? Yes and no. It really depends. The big thing with 2D is you have to draw it all. It's all hand drawn. You have to make everything yourself. Now, the thing with 2D is that you get to make everything yourself, which means if you want to cheat something, you can do it easily. If you want to get something to work exactly the way you envision it, you can do it. You're not limited to what a rig can do. You're not limited to, for example, I want to have this big smear frame right here. Oh, but the rig doesn't have these controls. Okay, gotta figure out how to do that. Oh, I want the character to hold a knife. In 2D, you just put the knife in the character's hand. You just draw it there. In 3D, you have to constrain it. Well, how do you constrain it so the character can still move the knife? Okay. There's pros and cons to both. In 3D, I don't have to worry about perspective. If I just turn the head there, done. That's easy. Just whoop, there we go. In 2D, okay, I have to know how to draw a head in multiple angles consistently so it doesn't squash and shrink and change perspective. That's very tricky. So I would say definitely 3D is easier to get into if you're totally new and you don't have drawing experience. Yes, most definitely. But if you're good at drawing, 2D is definitely easier to just kind of explore and do things quickly and iterate quickly. And you're not stuck learning all the tools as much. You can do it with a pencil and a piece of paper. let's see. When you mentioned the ball, but when you mentioned the ball, that would be more specific to more caricature style animation because I don't stretch 1 foot beyond my arm limit when then squash back. Even in realistic animation, you will see that bouncing ball principle come into play. Now, the thing with the bouncing ball is that it's not just the bounce part. And this is where that kind of confusion comes in. I think we've talked about this on stream a few times, but when you're looking at a bouncing ball, a lot of people will kind of pick one part of it. The usual part that they pick is, man, I cannot draw today. The arcs. So it's like, okay, you've got the spacing here, and it goes through faster, and then there we go. So it's kind of this motion. Okay, the bouncing of the arcs, the bounce part. That's one part, which we were looking at earlier. Another part is the squash and stretch. So squash and stretch, as the ball falls, it stretches. As it lands, I'm exaggerating here, it squashes. As it gets to the peak, it kind of returns to normal. So you get squash, stretch, like that. That's another aspect of it, where things that move very quickly will start to stretch. Now, if I just do this, my hand's not stretching like crazy. But what that can give me is motion blur. If I want to create a smear frame, as I do like that, if I was to animate this, I could have a pose here. That would be, of course I pick a hand. Well, let's just do a sphere. So let's say that the sphere is like this. This is just going to be a very basic hand here. And then I want it to go over here. And let's make sure I draw that somewhat decently. So we want that hand to swing through there. Well, if I just draw it normally, that would be, again, think of your spacing. We're going to have an arc like this. Okay, well, bouncing ball principle. How can we make this interesting? If I wanted to ease in here, I could do that. But what if I want to just have it like a big swoosh going through towards camera? Well, let's ease out a little bit here, go faster. In the middle, we might slow down just a little bit before coming in right here. That way it kind of creates that feeling of fast, slow, fast. That way it kind of, if ever you watch like a race car and you kind of see them going, like it's just vroom, and then they go across, kind of that, but with a little bit of a pause to catch up. We could do that. Or let's actually keep it simple. We'll just do this. So, like so. We have a little ease out. Let's exaggerate it even more here. Little ease out here. So the hand would then come through here. Maybe the fingers drag a little bit. It'll ease in. Maybe the hand pose here will be there. And in the middle, if I just put this frame right here, well, that's going to be kind of uninteresting because we've got this big gap between two of our poses. That's not going to be fun to look at. It's just going to be a pop. So we take this squash and stretch principle. As the ball squashes and stretches, it's filling in the gap, filling in the spacing that we would normally have if I just drew this kind of normally here and we had a ball there and then there. Oops, it would actually be up here. Look at that big gap that's in between them. That's a pop, a visual pop. Sometimes that's fine. But if you stretch the ball, it fills in that gap, makes it clearer, makes it so that our eyes can track the motion more. It creates motion blur, a fake motion blur, or an artificial motion blur. So I could do this where I just stretch the fingers and then stretch the palm of the hand, something like this. So now we start connecting those a little bit more. We get that smear. So the thumb would be like that. Actually, maybe a bit more like this. So we have that principle. We have the change of direction principle, which is the one that I like to point out the most to students, because it's the one that most students tend to not realize is a very important principle. When you have a bouncing ball, let's say you have a ball come in and then out, like so. Let's actually make that a little lower, like so. So this is your contact frame. The spacing of it on the frame before the contact, the frame before the contact is always going to be higher than the frame after the contact with a bouncing ball. So for example, here, this is higher than here. If we were to continue the ball, that's the frame before. Frame after would be here. The reason for this is that as the ball drops, it builds momentum, builds energy. As it hits the ground, that energy gets dissipated into the ground, and then whatever energy is left is what causes the ball to bounce back up. So that means that the amount of energy is going to be less, which means it can't jump as high. It's going to be lower. The only time that is not the case is if the ball were to be alive and it would land and then build up energy in an anticipation and then jump on its own. So it's actually building up its own energy, but it would need an anticipation to do that. Or if something hit the ball. So imagine like a tennis player hitting the tennis ball. The ball will get slower as it comes to the tennis ball or the tennis racket. And then when they hit it, that explosive input of energy shoots the ball forward. So it's going to have the frame after over here when it hits. But that's an outside force coming in and giving that energy. So in a normal, I would say, let's say in a motion that is controlled by the ball itself, most cases, it's going to be less. Okay, great. How does that help us? This applies to almost any change of direction. So if you have a change of direction that's going sideways like this, so maybe I'm walking and then, oh, let's go this way. That same principle applies. But instead of a contact pose, you're looking for the extreme. The most extreme point of the turn. Well, if you look at a contact pose, that is an extreme. It's the most extreme point of a turn. This is a change of direction, just like this, just a little sharper. And that same principle applies. The frame before the turn is going to typically be more extreme in spacing than the frame after. Like that. Now, this doesn't mean that you always ease out. So for example, you're not always going to have a big spacing here and then, a slow ease out. That gets very boring quickly. It's really just the frame before, frame after. So I could have the spacing be something like this, where it's coming through, it changes direction frame after, but then once I get that, I can just go right there. So it changes direction, it's starting to pick up speed, and then it can gain speed very quickly, but I still have that one moment. This is very important because it changes the feel of a turn, a change of direction. If I was to just go straight into this, or even let's not go that extreme. Let's put that arrow there. If I was to do this, where it's just a little bit more, what this creates is the feeling that whatever caused that object to turn hit the object. That if I was to turn, or if I'm going this way, suddenly it's like I was slapped in the face, and that's what causes me to turn. Not me turning under my own power. It gives an external force to that. Now, does that mean we should only ever use that when someone gets hit? No, not at all. But it gives us that control. When we understand this, If I want to make a softer motion, which is most cases for a natural motion, we use this. If I want to make a sharper, more cartoony motion, so maybe the character is just like turning their head and like they just snap their head over in like one frame, well, now I can use that. It'll make it look more violent, more like they just got slapped. Maybe I want that kind of feeling where they're moving under their own power, but whatever they saw, it's like a slap in the face of what's the word I'm looking for? A fictitious slap in the face? That's not the word. Hypothetical slap in the face. Not hypothetical. Rhetorical? No. One of those words. So that can help. And all of this is the bouncing ball. The bouncing ball isn't just the arc. It isn't just a bounce. It's the change of direction, the smears, the timing, the spacing, all of these things. It's how an object changes direction when it hits a wall. If this was a wall here, how would it change direction once it hits that? How does it change direction when it interacts with another object that it bounces off of? So when someone says, oh, think of the bouncing ball, it is a big topic. It is not just spacing, done. And when you're learning the bouncing ball, it is not just that, spacing, yay, I'll never think of this ever again. So, yeah, it's very important. And Skolas, hello! It's been a while. Hope you've been good. Let's see. Just catching up with the chat here. For how long have you been in the animation industry? I've been, well, if you count when I started learning animation, I've been doing animation for about 9 years now. It's going to be 10 years in 10 years next, I think like in February or something, March or February, since I first started learning animation. Like literally when I did my first bouncing ball. What is going to be almost 10 years ago soon, which is kind of weird to think. So yeah, it's hopefully this makes sense. So like when we're looking at this and we're once again looking at that bouncing ball, in this case we're just looking at that spacing there, but we could look at it in a lot of different ways. So for example, the change of direction. If you look here, let's see if I can do this in a different color. What's gonna show up? Blue? Yeah. So I'm trying to find a good frame here. Something we can track easily. Let's look at her. Let's look at the chin. So if you look at the chin, it eases up at the top and then it starts to come down there. But it's got that same principle. The peak, it goes up, slightly smaller, that change of direction, and then it comes down. Very slight, but it's there. And they can break that. They can choose not to do that. So for example, if we watch the belt here, goes up, eases in. Look at that. They did the opposite. Why? Because it forces the hips to drop down and drag the rest of the body down. They're doing that consciously. It creates this pull of the character as if someone's actually pulling her down versus her just kind of slowly coming down. It makes it more forceful. So she's coming up and then she's not just bounce. It's up, whoop, she drops herself down and you can feel it. See how that the downwards motion feels more violent? That's where it starts. It also goes into the way she impacts here. And we can really see that spacing, like just slam down there compared to how it goes up. Oof. But is that change of direction? If they did the opposite, what we were talking about before, and they did this, what would it create is that she's just heavy. Like there's the, if we kept that same spacing, she'd change direction and then slam down like a bowling ball, as if she was very heavy. It wouldn't be forceful. She's not slamming herself down, she's just falling down. And it's one frame. So very big important principle right there. And yeah, basically I just have a collection of like clips that I love in whenever I see something that I really like, I just download the clip, and like, especially if you're going on Twitter, you'll see these kind of things a lot, or just go to different websites, find the ones you like and start analyzing them. And for anyone who's interested in starting to analyze animation, a website I would highly recommend is, let me find it here, right here. So this is basically it started as a website that just collected anime clips that were really well animated. At this point, they've just got clips from all sorts of cartoons, and it's just typically really well done animation that you can just watch through. So for example, I think, yeah, they just had recently, they were uploading clips of Dumbo. So if you want to analyze scenes from Dumbo, for example, well, just open this up here and you can start watching some clips. And what's really nice about this, if you're completely new and you don't have any programs to scrub through, this player is actually made to scrub through. So I can just drag through right in here and start analyzing that animation. If you wanted to analyze something specific, so let's say we'll go back to Dofus here because I love that show so much. You can do a search here, and well, let's find some clips here. I'm trying to think of good ones. Let's go. I think this one, this was a cool fight scene. Hey, start analyzing. Like, even if you want to do a look at the effects animation is so cool. I so admire effects animators, like to do things like that. Oh, and just you look at the shape of the character as they get blasted away. It's just so cool. So I definitely recommend checking this site out if you're interested in analyzing animation, analyzing clips of whatever it is. And they've got a huge library now. This fight scene, oh, this is probably one of my favorite fight scenes ever. If is this going to be the main motions here? Yeah. Oh no, dang it. It's not the main fight. Where are you? Here. Yeah. Oh, dang it. They don't have the whole thing. They don't have little clips of it. That fight scene right in there is, the timing and spacing of it is so good. And I wish they had the whole thing. I think I have it on my computer somewhere, but I have to find it. Feeling confused at the moment. Doing a 72-hour jam for charity, and I'm making a hanger in Team Fortress 2 style. Oh, geez. That's a 72-hour jam. That's tough. Good luck with that. Man, I miss Team Fortress 2. I actually just rewatched the, what was it called? Expiration Date short clip, or short film, I should say, of Team Fortress 2. It's so good. Their jokes, the comedic timing in that is just so good, especially the bucket one. If you guys haven't seen it, definitely recommend checking it out. Just do a search for Team Fortress 2 Expiration Date. Look at that animation. Oh, so good. So yeah, studying animation, kind of a little, we went on quite a tangent from the original topic, which was studying just your own reference, but all of this still applies. Like whether you're looking at an animated clip like all of these, it's so good. uh, Owl House. If you haven't watched Owl House, I highly recommend it. It's also very good. But it goes from studying animated clips or right back to our first topic, studying your reference, opening your reference up and really studying it. Don't just watch and go, got it, let's start animating. Figure out why things are happening. And as a student, this is especially important. You do not want to just start throwing things into your animation without the knowledge to back it up. Otherwise, what you're going to end up doing is just hoping for the best, which is not a good thing. And if something goes wrong, then it ends up just being, let's change things until hopefully it looks right. No, you want to change things because you know that changing it will make a difference. You are doing a conscious choice to make things better, not hopefully randomly changing things to make it better. I guess the difference would be if you had a Rubik's Cube, for anyone who's played with those, the cubes that you rotate to try and get all the sides the same color, actually planning it out and making conscious choices to hopefully improve it versus just closing your eyes and changing it and hoping it actually look better in the end. Maybe you'll get lucky and it will. Otherwise, you're just making a mess of it. And it might improve, most likely it won't. Same with our animation. We want to make sure that we are making a conscious choice, not just blindly changing things, hoping that it'll make something better.